All right. So, Stephen, I just wanted to clarify with you. I looked it up. It's in the third daf. Okay. So let me just tell you what this argument came with. And basically, yes, but let me just explain to you where it came from. Is that there's an av. The av are the damages that are mentioned in the Mishnah. They are hashor rabo hamave harve. It's the ox, the pit, mave according to Rav is man, and then according to Shmuel is tooth, and then harve is fire. So all your main damages is known as the av. That's where you've got your biblical sourcing, okay, from the Mishnah. Your toldos resemble that in terms of operating procedures, meaning the concepts about why the toldos or the subcategories fall under the av is because they mimic it. Does that make sense, Stephen? So when an animal is angry, it can either smack you with its horns or its body or different things. But the bottom line is it's that would be under the category of goring. So we learned in the third daf that all the subcategories are exactly full damages, same as the primary categories. Okay, and it doesn't make a difference. And when we learn about all of these, there's only one exception, and that's a case of throros, which is a law from Moshe at Har Sinai, where an animal, which is part of regal, kicks up stones from its feet. So basically, the great Tana that brought up all these issues was Rav Papa. He said, are the tordos like the av in the sense that there are any payment leniencies? And eventually it came out that it was throros, but then from as far as Rav Papa was concerned, is that it's paid for, even though there's half payment damages, that it comes from choice property. And Rava wasn't sure if it came from choice property or the half payment damages were like tam of a goring ox, where it came from the body of an animal. So the question was then, why did Rava see it also as regal, the same as Rav Papa? And the answer is because both of them agree it's regal in that it's exempt in the public domain. Why? Because a standard case of regal is not that the animal had intent to damage or was eating, but it was in the normal course of its movement. And therefore, regal damage, you exempt in the public domain. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so now that we've done it in the third daf, we're going to hit this. So the question that was asked, where we ended off, was quite clear that we were talking about an object that is it considered damaging? I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. From the beginning point at which the animal sends a utensil spinning, rolling into motion where it eventually crashes like against the wall, or so is it the starting point, the catalyst at what caused the series of events, at which case then the animal is full damages muad because it's considered like caused from the body of the animal, or is it perhaps like at the point at which it breaks, which is throros because it's the force of an animal? So basically it's clear to Rabbah. Now Rabbah was Rava's teacher, and he said it's from the starting point, but Rava's not sure. So, what it ended off with is on the Dafans 17b5, where it asked a very, very straightforward question. The Gemara seeks to resolve Rava's inquiry. Come learn a proof from the following brisa. Hopping is not considered muad for a chicken. Some say, however, this is considered muad. The Gemara analyzes this brisa. Can you think that the brisa refers to a single case of hopping? Certainly not, because all must agree that it's normal for a chicken to hop. Rather, must it not be that the brisa refers to where the chicken was hopping and it sent the utensil flying, which then shattered when it struck the ground? And the Tanaim of the brisa argue on that point. In other words, one master of the brisa holds that we follow the start of the process, whereas the other master, the Bava Kamma, holds that we follow the breaking of the utensil. Accordingly, the point about which Rav inquired would in fact be a matter of Tanaic dispute? And the Gemara replies, no. And here we are on the 18th daf. It says, it might be that the brasa actually refers to where the chicken was hopping and sent pebbles flying into the utensil. And it's in the matter of dispute between Sumchus and the rabbis that the Tanaim of the brisa argue as well. So what we're basically saying here is that this was not resolved according to... Now where's Stephen? Okay. This was not resolved according to Rava, because now we found out it's not about the force of one's utensil being pushed. It's actually stones that hit a utensil, which is a classic case of tzoros. And what are we talking about? A chicken with muad and not muad? We're talking about the case of not whether or not it's the starting point or the ending point, but the fact that if pebbles smashed into a utensil and not the utensil moved itself, then that's a case of tzoros. And Sumchus says full payment damages for tzoros, and the rabbis say half payment damages. Now, in principle, Sumchus and the rabbis agree. Why do they agree? Because they say one's force, which is tzoros, is exactly the same as one doing it themselves. If I, for example, picked up a stone and threw it through your window, or I smashed the stone with my fist, it's still me that's doing it. So in principle, Sumchus is right that one's force is like one's body themselves. You remember, we learned that case on the bench with these 6 fat guys. And the 5th fat guy was pushing the bench and he broke it. And it said we learned there from that a force is like one's person. But there was a rule from Moshe of Harsina, which we don't see at the moment, that Sumchus actually agrees that he's heard the tradition, which means there's a limitation on the payment for the force of one's animal, which is half payment damages. So why? Because according to the Rosh, that whenever there's a law from Moshe, from Harsina, it doesn't come to add a stringency. That's why the rabbis agree with Sumchus in fact that it's one's force that's as one's own power. In other words, it's as if it's one's body, and that the law from Moshe of Harsina is coming to limit the amount of payment, not add to the stringency. That's the rule from the Rosh, is generally it comes to lessen it. All right, so now that we've gone on and we're saying, all right, now let's try and resolve the brisa for Rava another way. Come learn a proof from the following brisa. If chickens were pecking at the rope of a bucket and the rope snapped and the bucket broke, the owner of the chickens pays full damages. Learn from this that we follow the start of the process. That's what it's proposing. Now, by the way, guys, when it says learn from this that we follow the start of the process, know that Rava's teacher, Rabbah, believes that it's the start of a process. Okay, that he holds clear. It's Rava that's in question. So that's the proposal that the Gemara gives, and now it's going to analyze the Gemara. So the Gemara basically replies, interpret the full damages mentioned in the brisa as referring specifically to the rope. Why to the rope? Because there's no question that as far as the rope is concerned, that's where the chicken is pecking directly. So that is a case of a chicken's body creating the force. It's not an indirect force. Does that make sense? Of propulsion, where a rock is propelled to a different location. So therefore, the Gemara is trying to propose that the rope itself is muad, and it should be full damages. And then the Gemara asks, but listen, there's something unusual even about the rope. The rope should be half damages because it should be a case of keren. Now, what is keren? It's not just when an animal gores in order to injure or kill, or use part of its body to injure or kill somebody. There's 2 factors of keren damage. It's the fact that it's unusual damage. Why do we know there's a concept of unusual? Is because it's got a concept of tam and muad. If it was not unusual that the animal damaged, we wouldn't have the leniency of a tame animal versus a forewarned animal. The very fact that an animal is tame means it's unusual that it damages to start with. Is that not so, guys?
Yep.
Since that is the case, it's saying, listen, this is unusual damage. Why? Because a chicken doesn't suddenly, it's not get into this obsession of picking a rope. What is there beneficial of the rope? And basically the Gemara comes out saying, no, this is where the rope is sullied with dough. So often people used to use ceramic buckets to knead dough and let it rest. And when you let dough rest with yeast, it expands and you put a cloth over it. And what they did is they generally would hang it up. Why? Because they didn't want insects to get to it. And they wanted it to breathe a bit before you made it into bread. So if the rope was sullied with dough, chickens apparently or other birds would enjoy it like if you leave bread on the garden. And that's why it's not unusual damages for the picking at the rope. Some say it's because chicken enjoys moisture from a wet rope, and in that particular case, it's not unusual either. Someone will also say that it's for a rope that's slightly frayed, so it doesn't take a lot of damage in order to snap the rope. But then when you say full damages for that rope, a rope that's half broken is worthless. You're not talking real damage there. So it's fine. So we understand that it's full damages for the rope, but it doesn't matter because the Brisa states the bucket broke, implying that the Brisa's ruling includes the bucket as well. So how can you say that the Brisa's ruling full damages was said only in regard to the rope? Okay. Now, that being the case, the Gemara actually concedes the point. And it's going to attack now the Brisa from a slightly different angle. It says, rather, we can say that the Brisa's ruling of full damages for the bucket does not resolve Rava's inquiry. And that the Brisa might be authored by Sumchus, who said that for Tzoros one pays full damages. Okay? Let me just put this phone off because it's bugging me. Okay, so what it's saying here is that, listen, this doesn't resolve anything. Why doesn't it resolve anything? Guys, I'm asking you. Guys?
No.
Why does it resolve anything?
Yeah, in other words, this doesn't...
They're focusing on the...
They're focusing, yes, Kevin, I'm listening.
The rope is seems to be the main focus.
No. So we've gone away with that. We said, all right, so the Brisa includes the bucket as well. What are you going to discuss with regards to the bucket? So the Brisa acknowledges your point. It says, okay, but the Brisa now includes the bucket as well. And then the discussion now is between Sumchus and the rabbis. It doesn't resolve Rava's question. Why doesn't it resolve Rava's question? Because if it wants to say that it's an argument between Sumchus and the rabbis, it's talking about Tzoros, okay, which means basically that you pay full damages. So if I want to say to you, Sumchus is saying that there's full damages for Tzoros, or the fact of it is we're trying to determine something separate as to whether it's the start of the process where the bucket is caused to fall, or the end point at which it smashes. The minute you say Sumchus is talking about full damages, you can't get that answer. Again, why can't you get that answer? You can't get that answer because if I say it's half damages for Tzoros, okay, where a utensil rolls and smashes at the new place, and it's considered the end point at which it actually breaks, and that's considered the damage, and for that you pay half damages. And if you consider it the starting process, like Rabbi, at which the animal's foot was the catalyst, and therefore it's the animal's body that caused it, that's full damages. It's only when you've got a half damage comparison compared to a full damage comparison can you know if that would answer Rava's question. Is it the starting point, or is it the point of the actual breakage? Does that make sense? But if you rule according to Sumchus that it's full damages with Tzoros, there would financially be no difference where it broke in the beginning point or it broke at the actual point of breakage. No financial difference because it would be full payment according to Sumchus. And that's halachic, that's what you call financially. Then halachically, there'd be no difference because, again, if it's muad in both cases, then there's no conceptual difference. So we're saying the minute this goes back to a case of an argument between Sumchus and the rabbis as Brisa, and it's not clearly addressing Rava's point as to the beginning of the process compared to where it smashes after it's rolled, then you can't answer the question. The minute Sumchus and the rabbis get into the discussion, you can't answer it, because then you all of a sudden, if you go by Sumchus full damages, how would you ascertain if it's a starting point or the ending point? How would you ascertain it? There's no way to, because the damages are full payment. Have you guys understood what I'm saying at this point?
Yeah. I do.
Okay, so what am I saying, guys?
So what you're saying is that with the rabbis, it's full payment regardless.
No,
Whereby with
no, Sumchus is full payment. The rabbis are half. The rabbis see the law from Moshe from Har Sinai, so it's half payment for tzoros.
Yeah, they do see it. No, but they say it's full payment, but because it's from Mount Sinai.
We established that halachically it's half payment. We know that they agree with him in principle, but then let's move on from there and say the argument between Sumchus and the rabbis is that the rabbis say half payment from the law of Moshe Sinai and full payment according to Sumchus. That's not what I'm trying to ask. What I'm asking is, the minute you're having a discussion between Sumchus and the rabbis, whether it's half payment according to Sumchus full payment for Sumchus for tzoros, or half payment for tzoros according to the rabbis, why does that not resolve Rava's question on a practical basis?
Well, Rava's question is that whether it's a start, whether the whole thing started from the beginning or at the end, whether it's whether it's the force of the chicken itself, and they're not taking that into account.
Okay, so if you had to say it in a clearer way, I know you understand. How would you say it in a clearer way?
Rava is saying that that there is a start point, and we need to take that into account.
No. All right, let me just word it in one sentence.
I've got it, but I don't. But
got it means you can give it over.
Yes, okay. I can't give it over. Go ahead.
So this is the statement, guys. Whether you have the brisa where there's the cow, and the cow puts its foot down and doesn't quite smash the vessel because it's not direct impact, but sends this vessel hurtling and rolling across the ceramic floor, and then it shatters a few meters down against a wall, right? It rolls, and it shatters at that point. A utensil, not a stone that hits into a utensil. A stone that hits into a utensil is a clear case of tzoros. What the Gemara is trying to find out now is a case of tzoros with a utensil.
Like a knife or something like that?
No, a knife won't break. We're talking about like a
cup?
Yeah, like
a ceramic cup?
Or something that can break. Ceramic.
Okay.
Delicate mingvar ceramic. So what we're trying to say is there a case of tzoros? We're trying to apply it now to something else. The classic case is when a stone lifts the foot of the animal and shatters a vessel. Now we're saying, what happens if the cow brings down its foot? If it directly smashes on it, there's nothing to talk about. That's regal. If it smashes but doesn't quite smash it then, but clips it and the vessel rolls to another part of the concrete and smashes against the wall, we want to know what's the case in a utensil, a vessel. Call it ceramics. So Rava's teacher says clearly it's the starting point, because if the cow had never put down its foot, nothing would have started. This whole process never would have started, ever. So therefore, we see it as not really a process of tzoros, but it made no difference if a cow came down and smashed it directly, or it knocked it and it went wiggling and it smashed. It's muad because it's from direct bodily contact of the animal that set this process in motion.
Basically, it's the same as dropping a ming vase from the third floor.
It's exactly the same concept, exactly. So for Rabbah, it's the start of the process. It's muad food damages, nothing to do with tzoros, nothing to talk about. Rava is not so sure. Rava is not so sure. So Rava wants to know, and some of the rabbis, is it from the beginning part at which it's full bodily contact, like a zav, where it's full payment damage is muad, or whether when it rolls and smashes in the new point, it's a case of tzoros with a utensil, not a stone. So Gavin, so that's the difference. The one is a utensil and the other is a stone. Now we're at the point where we're saying this brisa doesn't deal with it with the bucket and the rope initially. Why? Because we thought it would be a classic case of the birds, the chickens that peck at the rope, and that would be a case where the rope, which is attached to the bucket, is one article, and when the rope snaps, it's full damages for the rope and half damages for the bucket. You would think that. So we don't understand now why we're saying that for the bucket, it's full damages. We're thinking that because it says that it's full damages for the bucket, this might answer Rava's question. How would it answer Rava's question? Very simple. If I want to say it's a case of tzoros, okay, and I say it's pecking of the rope is obviously full payment because that's a direct pecking of the chicken. Yeah. That's easy, okay. Then the bucket falls. If we say it's half damages for the bucket, we've resolved Rava's question. How do we resolve Rava's question? The following. We know then it's the end process for because it was from the rope that snapped attached to the bucket, and therefore it's half damages for tzoros, and it's the end of when the bucket actually smashes. That's the point at which we calculated, and that would answer Rava's question. How would we know that? By half damage payment. Half damage would imply the end of the process, and therefore it would be a case of half damages and tzoros. If we say that it's full damages for the bucket, then it would appear that it agrees with Rava's teacher, that even though that was the rope that was first pecked and not the bucket that was damaged, it's a case of the start of the process, which would be full damages, direct contact. It would be seen almost as direct contact. So, does that make sense? End process, half damages, tzoros. Direct contact, even if it didn't smash directly from its energy, but that started the process, that would be full damages, not a case of tzoros for a utensil. Yeah. So it seems that when we take this brisa compared to cow that knocked a utensil when flying and smashed, and we take the rope and the bucket example, maybe the second brisa of the rope and the bucket might answer Rava's question. It's bringing a different brisa. And we're saying it doesn't answer Rava's question because this is an argument between Sumchus and the rabbis, meaning it reasserts itself. It could be that the bucket smashes through tzoros, which means it's the end of the process. But if it's an argument between Sumchus and the rabbis, Sumchus says full payment, the rabbis say half payment for tzoros. And especially if this brisa holds by Sumchus, which says it's full payment, that won't determine if it's the start of the process or the end. Because again, if I'm paying full payment, whether it's the end process or full payment, whether it's the start of the process, what difference does it make to me financially? Does that make sense, guys? What difference?
Yeah.
In other words, Soros says, Sumchus says for Soros, full payment. Okay? So say it was the bucket and eventually rolled and crashed, or it crashed after the rope, and it's a utensil that broke. Okay, so it's the end process. So big deal. You're paying full payment. According to Sumchus, you're still paying full payment. If it's the beginning of the process and it's moored from the ox's direct force, that's full payment. So either way, you have to pay full payment. So that won't answer Rava's question because financially you're paying the same. Now we've got to determine who's this brisa written by. Is it written by the rabbis or is it written by Sumchus? Because if it's written by Sumchus, we're not going to be able to know the answer because it's full payment either way. But if it's written by the rabbis, we can now see that it's about the start of the process because it says in this brisa, when the bucket falls, It's full damages, which means the rope that caused the bucket to fall started the process, that set the process in motion. It's the same as the animal smacking its foot on directly, or the chickens pecking at the bucket directly. It would make no difference then, and the rule of Tsoros wouldn't apply to utensils, it seems. Throwing a utensil, it only applies to a stone hitting a utensil. So we want to see what happens if the utensil is thrown or falls, etc. So we've now got to determine who's this price from. Because if it's from the rabbis and it's full payment, we know it's the start of the process if the animal hit it directly. And then there wouldn't be a case of Tsoros for utensils. Do you understand why we need to see who's authoring this brisa now? Is it the rabbis or Sumkos? Because this will tell us our answer for Rava.
Yeah.
Guys, do you know what the question is? Or should I just go on and you're going to review this?
No, I got it.
Say it.
Say it again, the question, Dan, because I'm trying to figure out what you...
Okay.
I mean, I sort of got it, and I'm understanding it, but...
Yeah.
Gavin, I told you this price isn't the easiest one. Hey, this Gemara, this 80 stuff. Okay. So what we're trying to say here is if I tell you that there are different rules that apply, but either way I'm paying full damages, I kind of lost interest because I'm paying full damages, right?
Okay.
I want to know when I can pay half damages or no damages. As
50% discount, that's good.
Damage, yes. So what we're saying is as follows, is if Sumkos rules for Tsoros, it's full damages. And it's the same as a muad animal, meaning the animal in a normal case of regal. When an animal crushes something with its body, when an animal crushes something with its body or its foot, that's normal regal. That's full payment.
Okay.
First property. So
Got that,
if
yeah.
the act of moving a utensil is not like a stone that smashes into an object, right? I'm hearing shuffling. It could be your mic. Oh, sorry, man. So what I'm saying is as follows. We know that if stones leave a horse's foot and hits a vessel, that's half payment according to the rabbis. Okay? So we know the leniency. We're trying to find out with a utensil for Tsoros. If a utensil is knocked by an animal, in that case, is it full damages like normal regal? In other words, the leniency only applies to a stone hitting a utensil. Or if a utensil is knocked by an animal's foot, is that a case of direct damage by the animal's foot, like regal? Or is it a case of Tsoros because the object only smashes upon impact? That's what we're trying to determine here. Why are we trying to determine that? I want to know if I have to pay half damages or full damages.
Yeah, you want to see if it's the same as a stone.
Yes, I want to see exactly, Gavin. I want to see the case of the Tsoros with the utensil the same as a stone, because if it's not and it's muad, there's no payment difference between if it's that or a normal case of regal. I'm having to pay full payment, which is of disinterest to me as a damager. Might be of halachic interest, but as a damager, I'm still in for the full amount. So we don't know if the case of Tsoros for half damages applies to a utensil or not that goes flying and only breaks upon landing. Does that make sense? According to Rava, it's the same case as regal, and there's no financial leniency. It's full payment, according to Rabbah. According to Rava, we're not sure yet. Does that make sense, guys? And that's why when it comes back to Sumchus's opinion of full payment, we're not going to resolve that. Because again, if you're paying full payment for Tsoros or regal, you kind of feel despondent, right? Because you're paying full payment. So we want to see if this price is according to the rabbis or Sumchus. So let me read on to the price. Let me go on. Okay. So the Gemara basically wants to know that whoever determines, if we determine who writes the brisa, that will answer this question for Rava. And it says, if you maintain that the brisa is authored by Sumchus, Guys, I'm just putting all of you on mute at the moment. Okay. So rather we can say that the Brisa's ruling of full damages for the bucket does not resolve Rava's query, because the Brisa might be authored by Sumchos, who says that for Tsoros, one pays full damages. So now the Gemara asks, if you maintain that the Brisa is authored by Sumchos, then recite the end of the Brisa and see if it can be reconciled with his view. Because if we know who wrote the Brisa, we'll know if the start or the end of the process is right. If it's written by the rabbis with Sumchos, we're still not going to be sure because it's still full payment. So we're reading the end of the Brisa, and it said, if a shard shot out from under the shattered bucket and fell on a different utensil and broke it, then for the first utensil, the bucket, he pays full damages. And for the shard that hit the secondary vessel and shattered it, he pays only half the damage, because the second one has been broken through Tsoros. Now, if the Brisa is authored by Sumchos, as you maintain, does he hold that one ever pays only half damages for Tsoros? And perhaps you'll say that Sumchos differentiates between the damage caused by one's animal's force and that's caused by the force of its force. In other words, a secondary force. All right. So I'm going to unmute you guys and see if you understand what's going on. All right, guys, do you understand what I've just said or not? Do you want me to say it again?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I'm happy to.
Go for it.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think you guys maybe need to do a little bit of chuzorah, or maybe a bit of prep. Okay. So this is what I'm saying. So it's saying, listen, if we know it's Sumchos, we don't answer Rava's question because it's full payment, whether it's Tsoros, and we're not going to determine whether it's about the beginning of the process where it's direct regal or it's Tsoros. It's full payment. We're in for the same amount of money. Sumchos writing the Brisa, we haven't answered Rava's question. If the rabbis answer the Brisa, we know if it's the starting process or the end process. Fine. Okay. So we're saying, let's see who authored the Brisa. So what's it saying here is right. The bucket comes down and smashes. And when it smashes, a shard of the bucket flies out and breaks a secondary vessel. Okay? Do we say that the first vessel that fell, again, it's like the rope. The rope's attached to the bucket. The hens peck at the bucket. The bucket falls down. The bucket smashes. The shard of the bucket hits a second bucket, shatters that bucket, ceramic bucket. We say for the first bucket, full payment. The second bucket, half payment. Now we want to know, is this Brisa by the rabbis or not? So now the question comes up, is what does Sumchos say about secondary force damage? Why is this secondary? The first primary case of Tsoros is rope gets pecked, rope falls, that's the first case of Tsoros, and the bucket shatters. That's directly from the animal that causes the force of the gravity, the bucket, the smash. The same as a stone kicking up a pebble. Full damages for that bucket. Could be Sumchos. Then it's saying that the shard of that first bucket goes in the second bucket, breaks that. And that's half damages. So it's saying, is there ever a case that Sumchos might agree that there's a law from Moshe at Hasina, but he learns that the half payment damages only occur on the force of one's force, meaning a secondary force. Meaning if the animal kicks it up directly, Sumchos sees it as full damages, and he doesn't see the law of Moshe from Hasina applying to that, but he sees that if an animal kicks up a stone and it hits a utensil, and that utensil shatters, and that second part of a shard breaks a second vessel, Sumchos might, do we say that he might say that the half payment damages for a second degree of Tsoros, in other words, a force smashing a force, secondary force. Are you with me? So we're saying we don't know. What is Sumchos saying there? Does he not believe in the law from Moshe of Hasina at all? Did he not get this tradition? Or does he believe it only applies to a secondary force? If a bucket smashes and the shard hits another bucket and smashes that. So we're trying to answer the question. So The question is going to be answered now. It's saying, but then you're going to find difficulty with that which Rav Ashi inquired. How's the force of its force treated according to Sumchus? Is it like its force or is it not like its force? Okay, in other words, what we're trying to say is Rav Ashi presents this inquiry below. And this inquiry is on the Daf of 19a. And it's explained that the root of the inquiry is whether Sumchus accepts that there's a halacha lemoshe misinai about Soros. But he interprets it as applying specifically to the force of its force, or whether Sumchus does not accept that there's such a halacha lemoshe misinai altogether. Okay. So Rav Ashi resolves on the basis of this brisa that it is not like its force. And meaning, this is what it actually means. Okay, it means, must it not rather be that the brisa is then authored by the rabbis who rule half damages in the case of tzoros? Okay, so in other words, we can see from this brisa that it's not ruled according to Sumchus. And if it's not ruled according to Sumchus, then it would seem that that if it's ruled according to the rabbis that say it's half payment damages for tzoros, and it says learn that the bucket is full payment damages, the first bucket, we learn according to Rav Ashi that it's like Rabbah, that it's the start of the process that actually determines the payment, which means it's the same as regal. In other words, if the utensil goes flying, and it's not the stone that goes in the utensil, but the utensil goes flying and smashes in a few moments, it's the start of the process, full damages, regal, exactly the same as the rabbis. Does that make sense? I mean, exactly the same as Rabbah. Does that make sense? So again, we've established, hang on one sec, we've established that this brisa is according to the rabbis, and if it is according to the rabbis, it should be full, half payment for the first bucket. Half payment. The fact that it's full payment would seem to indicate, according to Rav Ashi, that Rabbah is correct, that it's the start of the process, and it's not a case of tzoros for a utensil, even if it smashes at a later point, because if it's the start of the process, it's the same as regal. What were you going to ask, Kev?
Sumchus, according to him, every damage is full payment. There's no half damages. That's his view.
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to? So you're trying to see if he will agree if the secondary damage, force on force. That's what, according to, I can't remember.
Yes. Yes. And
as we see it at the moment, he only sees that every damage is full payment. There's no leniency.
Correct. But we see this brisa is written by the rabbis. And therefore,
if he'll agree to it.
It seems that Rav Ashi said it's definitely according to the rabbis by reading that point, because and since that is the case, it would seem to follow Rabbah's opinion that there's not a case for tzoros for utensils because it's done from the start of the process. That's what we can deduce from this brisa. We're going to hit more next time, guys. I hope you have a good day.
Shkach, thank you.
All right.
Shkach, you too. Thanks, Damon.